So now we have a very special guest online from Sweden, from the construction and civil engineering company that has been pioneering the digitalization for quite a while. From Peab, I'm super happy to welcome Development Manager Alina Nilander. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
It's such a pleasure to have you. So let's start with, in brief, for the international audience, could you describe Peab a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So Peab is actually the largest construction and civil engineering company in Sweden and one of the largest in the Nordic region. We're pretty old by now, so we turned 60 a couple of years ago. We built up by 4 business areas, which are civil engineering, as you said, and construction, but we also have industry and product development. And to describe a little bit more about what we do, we have this saying that in Swedish goes från grus till hus. And translated, it means from gravel to house. And it means that we focus on having our own resources where the industry business area provides the civil engineering and then construction business with everything from asphalt to gravel and concrete, everything you can imagine. But I'd say most importantly, we consist of 16,000 driven and amazing employees.
And so it's a big construction company plus more. Could you describe your role at Peab?
Yeah, I work as a development leader. I've been with the company for 3 years now. I was in the start hired to do the supplier onboarding when we started off with OpusCapita. But today I've taken over the responsibility for the whole system. I've been part of the implementation in Sweden and done their project leading in Norway to roll it out there.
So in brief, which Peab divisions use OpusCapita today and for what?
It's used both in Sweden and Norway. It's used by all our 4 business areas. And you could say that we use it both in our offices, but also on our work sites. So it's a wider range of products.
It is. And so you've been an OpusCapita customer since 2019. And when you were starting the new system implementation, what were your initial objectives for that?
So back in 2016, we made a decision on Peab that the procurement department should work category-based. And as you might saw on Robert's presentation, OpusCapita definitely support that way of working. So our choice fell on OpusCapita. But furthermore than that, we also wanted a system that could support us in different types of call-ups. So the previous system that we used more punch-outs, and now we wanted someone that also supported catalogs and RFQs, smart forms, etc. So a wider range of call-ups.
That sounds very good. Does time criticality play a role there?
Oh, definitely. The largest supplier we have by far is a supplier it's possible to place orders, I think, as late as 6 o'clock in the evening, and the production sites, they still get the goods the day after. So everybody relies on getting goods very fast, and that, I don't think that would be possible without a procurement system.
And I suppose on construction site, it needs to happen fast, and there are situations where you need to react fast.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So how did, when you then ran through the rollout for the solution internally, how successful was that?
We started off in Sweden back in 2020. They were used to using a procurement system as we went from one system to another one. About a year after we went live in Sweden, we went live in Norway. They were not used to having a system. So we had 2 totally different experience here. And I think it learned me a lot about having patience. We also rolled out in the middle of Corona, which makes it very hard to go out to the sites and educate properly. So we focused on making an e-learning, which every new user should go in order to know how to do their settings, about the project number and the delivery address. We also do team educations, but now luckily when Corona is pretty much over, we also started going out to the production sites and talk to the people, listen about their feedback, and also giving them the proper education.
All right. And so now moving on to today, what gets purchased via OpusCapita eProcurement? In a little more detail, let's say.
Yeah. So as the company operates over the whole supply chain, we have from the industry and to fully construct things and build things. We buy everything from, office supplies, it's paper and pencils, maybe the boring things that was mentioned before, and to more complicated things like, screws, wood, concrete additives, gravel, asphalt, everything in between.
So it sounds to me like almost everything you can think of. Does that also include, we talk about this direct and indirect procurement categories, meaning basically direct, the things you need, let's say, to build a building, whereas indirect, the things you need sort of on the background, like cleaning services or office supplies or so forth. Do you do both in OpusCapita eProcurement?
Yeah, all of it is included. So it's both from, mattresses and rugs in the offices and hygiene articles to these more wooden screws and everything in between.
And so that's a lot. That's a lot of categories. How would you describe the importance of centralizing all of these into one solution?
In Peab, we have this saying, and I assume it exists in many other countries, but it should be easy to do right. And one way for us to make it easier for our requisitioners is to gather all suppliers in one place. In this way, the requisitioners can be certain that they are purchasing from suppliers that have a frame contract, and they are chosen strategically for Peab. I would also say that, as I mentioned before, that we are working category-based, which makes it important to centralize, because searching for an item, it shouldn't matter what supplier pops up. If we say that we have 3 suppliers selling the same kind of item, it shouldn't really matter the best price only. You should focus on what makes the best deal in total. So you should look at environmental attributes, you should look at lead time, for example, etc. And this is only possible if you centralize all these suppliers in one place. At least it makes it much easier.
It sounds like it does, and it sounds like there's a whole lot that gets handled in Peab for that. So now we've talked about the web shop side, let's say, where people place orders, basically. But then you also, the kind of what happens after that order has been placed or something has been placed in the cart and move forward. So you also exchange the supply chain documents, let's say the orders, with your suppliers electronically. That's via the business network purchase to pay messaging service. So which documents do you actually exchange in that?
Today we use order and order responses.
All right, and what does that actually mean? That they're electronic, in what formats, in what way do they get transferred?
We send orders over PEPPOL and EDI, which are our goal to do electronical, but we also use PDF. And this is a must because we have so many suppliers since we're a large company, and we have to support the suppliers that hasn't come that far into the digitalization road trip. So we do that as well with the smaller suppliers, but the goal is to use a PEPPOL. Most definitely, it has a very clear benefit, like you talked about before. It is a standardized message type, and it can be reused. So it has the benefit of being efficient and very quick to set up.
And I suppose for construction, that's actually the digitalization it works in. There are like very advanced, let's say, players, and then especially the smaller ones, maybe still in very much paper-based. So I suppose that's one very important thing to have. But then you mentioned PEPPOL, and I've understood that PEPPOL for orders maybe isn't super common. Could you expand on that a little bit? What do you see as benefits for PEPPOL? Sorry.
Yeah, I do think that PEPPOL is getting more and more used, but we are still in this construction and civil engineering business area. So I think it takes a little bit longer time, but I think a lot of the companies, at least here in Sweden, has woken up, and we talked a lot about using PEPPOL, especially with Beast as a format. I think it also differs depending on in what country you are. So we don't use the same formats in Sweden and in Norway, for example, that we look into the countries and see what they're needing. But I do think it's important to use electronic order formats because we don't have these manual errors that happens with people, and the benefit of putting it up quickly when we need it.
Yeah, exactly. So basically you get this end-to-end digitalization. What benefits does that bring? Or is there something that you'd like to add that didn't get mentioned? Because we mentioned a few already.
When it comes to end-to-end, I would see the benefit of the traceability, that we're able to follow up our orders and what we order and order responses and do the goods receipts in the system. It also provides us helping with doing a better and more accurate negotiations and finding new contracted suppliers.
Sounds very, very good. All right, jumping back in the beginning, you mentioned that you first started in Sweden, then you expanded to Norway. What's next? Do you have other expansion plans for the future?
So we also exist in Finland, and that is definitely on the roadmap, looking for that for the future. We are also active in Denmark, but we're pretty small in Denmark still. It's just some of the industry business areas that are active there. So that would be the goal, but we're not quite there yet. But Finland is on the roadmap.
What about expanding to new procurement categories, let's say?
What do you mean?
So are there new types of, let's say, products or services that you're thinking of adding to be ordered via OpusCapita?
Definitely. I'm in the middle of my testing right now, so I'm taking a little pause here from today's work, but we are activating a new supplier. That's not very interesting per se because we activate a lot of suppliers over the years, but this supplier sells workwear and they are moved from one system at Peab into OpusCapita. With this, we will open up for our professional workers. So that's an additional 6,000 users that will be activated. And these users, they will only be able to see this limited store view function. So we will only show the workwear for them. And more than that, we also activate 3,000 approvers into the system that will have to approve the requisitions before it turns into an order. So a lot of things are happening right this month. So we're very excited about that.
And that sounds super, super good. And expanding is exactly what we want to see happening, and making your processes and your work basically easier. So let's wrap up a little bit, because we've talked about you definitely are a pioneer in this, sort of moving forward, expanding, adopting new things. What would you say to companies, construction companies, or let's say any company that is considering adopting a digital procurement system and tying that in with the digital message exchange?
I would say that you should do it. It's so right in time, just like Laurie said. But I would also add on that you have to have patience depending on what business area you're working in. I think as of today, I don't believe that it's the technical solution maybe that's lacking. We heard a lot today that things are moving fast and you have updated a lot of things at OpusCapita. But I think today it's more about the process of making people change their behavior from using a telephone or an email and move over to working with a digitalized tool instead.
That sounds very, very great. And of course, we hope to see more and more of the world turn digital, basically, because it helps us all. Thank you, Alina. This was super, super interesting. We're not going to let you go just yet, because I think we have some questions from the audience. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be back with Robert for those questions. All right, we do have some great questions from the audience, and let's welcome back also Robert to the stage for those. But I definitely want to start with a question to Alina. And the question goes, how is Peab, since you mentioned that those rollouts to the users and now you're adding more new users, so how is Peab handling to make sure that end users are up to date and receive all the necessary information on time?
We try to make sure to communicate through many different kind of channels, but most importantly, I think it's about keeping up the information for the end users to make sure they know what's the latest.
Yeah, you mentioned you had online learnings or online learning environment before. Do you feel that that has helped?
It does help a lot. We also use super users because we're such a large company with a lot of users. It's not possible for me to support over 10,000 users. So we have educated a lot of people within the different business areas and the different regions and companies in order for them to then learn the rest of the organization.
That sounds very, very good. All right.
Just to add on that, so overall the application offers a wide range of notifications, right? So, and every customer, Peab does it in a different way than some other companies do. These notifications can be activated and used so people can, let's say, get the information, what is up to date, and let's say when there's an order coming in, etc., an order change, all of that can be configured.
Sounds very good. All right, another one for Alina, talking about tying in that information, let's say. So in construction, there is a whole lot of data for a single project, let's say, in various systems, various points of view. So how are you able to tie in this purchasing data that you have in eProcurement to the other vital data in a construction project, such as bill of quantities, the scheduling, the what needs to be ordered, what needs to be delivered, and when?
Yeah, so we do have planning systems outside within the company internally, but I think that after the order is sent away, we do receive an order confirmation, which is a big help for the users. They also use the goods receipt in the system. And for us, for me and my colleagues on the office, we then use an integration to send the data over to Peab's BI analysis tool so that we can analyze the data.
That sounds very good. Would you say that it sort of helps to reduce the hassle of who ordered what and were the orders correct and what needs to be paid and whatnot?
Oh, definitely. And I think it helps that also that a user is able to see what another user has ordered. So it's not sensitive as in when you call somebody or when you email somebody when you can't access if that person gets sick. If you have used a system, you're able to see what your colleague has ordered. You're able to go out on the site when you receive the goods and you can mark that to say like, that Anna's goods has been received, and she can be sure when she gets back to work or hasn't been on site that the goods has been received and the invoice is actually matching what we have received.
That sounds super important to make it flow smooth. All right, then let's take a question for Robert. So we talk about this complexity management a lot, and we do actually mention on our website as well that that our eProcurement solution handles even the complex things. So how does that show in practice?
Okay, very difficult, but
it's a big question.
Yeah. So overall, complexity comes from the business, let's say, categories that the different customers cover in their whole procure-to-pay process. And well, actually, Peab is quite a good example. So the complexity that you have in your construction sites with your strategic suppliers that you mentioned, that complexity we are able to map. We map it by categorizing the information, by structuring it first of all well, and then of course also by being able to match your expectations regarding time-critical, high availability business. But we have over the time, of course, let's say, seen that a lot of companies actually focus on this MRO stuff, and this was actually a lot of projects done in history, that these customers have actually not only done the office supplies, but they have really worked on this service business, or they have worked on the MRO part, on this spare parts business. That adds a lot of complexity to it, because it's not important only that the process runs efficiently, but that you also order the right thing from the beginning. If the wrong part arrives on time, it's not of any help. So we need to also ensure that the user is ordering the right thing. So and I think exactly here, in this complexity, we're adding a lot of value. Just looking at the projects, what actually is implemented right from the beginning, there is no real process that I say they start only with office supplies. No, the projects really start with the business that makes a difference. So that's what I'm seeing. And also these, let's say, customers like Peab, they are pushing us to actually improve and to add a better functionality, either it's better search functionality or better enriching or aggregating catalogs. This is really, that helps us to get even better than we already are.
That is very true. So do keep pushing, Alina. So that does help. All right, then one more for the both of you, actually. So we've talked about digitalization, moving things to a digital format, web shop, and so forth, and exchanging those documents electronically. And we've talked about the struggles we still have, let's say, in the industry. Some things are paper-based or email-based or whatnot. Where do you think that from where we are now, where is this all headed? How do you see, do you want to, Alina, maybe take that first? How do you see the future?
I see some of the suppliers that are on a good way. For example, the supplier that can receive orders late in the evening and which have a highly automated warehouse that can receive the goods. I think we want to make it, we want to fewer the errors that we have today. And I think that is only possible with digital tools to make sure that everything goes right in a smooth way, so that our workers out on the production sites, that they can focus on what's important for them. And that is to build things. That is not to sit in front of the computers. So we kind of just want to make it, invisible. We don't want to make the system seen. We just want to make it very easy for them.
And that's actually super well put. Do you want to add to that, Robert?
Yeah, I mean, there is, of course, let's say, the wide span of companies, business partners that are more advanced in, let's say, digitizing the process, and the ones that are runners-up. The whole point is, I believe that overall this digitization trend will continue. I very often when I travel to Dortmund and meet the taxi drivers there, they have now really started to digitize their processes. Until recently, they just accepted cash. Now, all of a sudden, they accept sum up payments. So they directly, let's say, skip one evolutionary step. So I even believe that the small businesses, they will finally understand that digitization is a must-do. We have mentioned it multiple times. And even in between, we have a lot of possibilities to also digitalize email or PDF attachments. So I think that is inevitable. And I really keep pushing, saying also the small businesses will follow. I confirm also what Alina has said. We need to have the patience to take them with us to pull. We can't rush into it because we partially depend on some of these suppliers. So it's a taking and giving, but I think overall we can look forward of accelerating a little bit the digitization.
Definitely, that we can do and will do. All right, thank you so much, Alina, for being with us. Thank you, Robert. Thanks both for answering the questions, and Alina especially for the interview. It's been such a pleasure having you, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.